Hello, good afternoon. How are you? I've got a great guest you're going to fall in love with today. Author of 11 books, speaker at Christian Writers Conferences, men's conferences, couple retreats, and more. He speaks and writes all across the country. Best-selling author Tim Shoemaker joins me today. Do you see that skeleton behind him? That's just one of Tim's many props that he uses to make his presentations come to life in a practical way. Today, we're going to discuss his latest projects and how he's going to be encouraging Christian writers and speakers at the upcoming Greater Philadelphia Christian Writers Conference next weekend. So if you're interested in this, you've got to get on the money, okay? July the 26th through the 28th. Hi, I'm Patricia Durkin, the Christian Message Coach, and this is Marketers on a Mission, the live show designed to equip and inspire Christian writers and speakers. This is episode number 87, my interview with best-selling author Tim Shoemaker and presenter at Greater Philadelphia Christian Writers Conference. Hello, Tim. How are you?
Hey, Patricia.
It's always good to see you.
Definitely.
Give us a little bit of a rundown on that crazy office decor, would you?
Oh, you know what? I've got all kinds of crazy things in this office. But yeah, the skeleton was one I used for, I just had to have it for a keynote I was giving, I think it was. And you know what? I just took such a liking to it. And I thought it would scare, like kids when they come up here, like grandkids or whatever, but they actually liked it. So I've got a little, fish line connected to its jaw and a little ring down low so it can talk, as long as I'm next to it. So that's fun. But yeah, it's the office is it's a creative place, right? So I don't know if you can see here. I'm going to try to turn. I've got a moose on the wall. I'm not getting over there. That's Piggy the moose. So, yeah, it's quite a place. And sometimes the decor changes a little bit depending on what project I'm working on. If I'm working on a book, I've got an alligator skull over there when I was working on some stuff there. And so it's definitely fun.
I have heard some of your stories in previous presentations at the Philly conference about how the challenge of getting these props on an airplane.
Oh my goodness. I know it. I just came back. I'm trying to think where I was. Oh, I was speaking at a conference in Glen Erie in Colorado Springs there. And sure enough, I always get the little TSA notices that they've been in the luggage, and they've checked it out because, what kind of a guy travels with some of the weird things I had. I think last weekend I had a Bozo Bop bag, those punching bags. I had a vacuum. I had an alligator skull. All kinds of crazy things. But they help you make the point.
Yes, they do. And you're so very good at that. I've been to many of your presentations and your workshops just as a participant, and everybody raves about your teaching abilities and how much you obviously love God, and it's just a great matchup. So we're going to talk about more about that, especially right now. What about your latest projects? You do fiction for teen boys, you do nonfiction, you do practical, everything has a practical application. You even mentioned a minute ago that you're working on a women's book.
Actually, yeah, it's just it's a proposal stage now. It's in fact, it's almost done being written. So I hope that somebody picks it up, but it's called 7 Things Mama Never Told You. And I think coming from the perspective of a guy with a wonderful wife and a great marriage, it kind of gives me that ability to speak into lives. There's just so many mediocre Christian marriages out there, and it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be. And so, yeah, sharing some things from the heart. Yeah, that's definitely one of the projects.
You get such a broad reach because you talk to teens, you talk and speak and serve to teens, men, women, couples. Really, you hit all the ages that, except for small children and seniors. And you may be doing that. I just don't know it. How'd you get such a broad reach?
Okay, so here's what it really is, Patricia. It's all about the kids. It's still about the kids. That's my favorite place to write. I love writing high-end middle grade fiction or YA. And so many of these kids, if you really want to help them, if you really want to keep them from falling into traps, well, you need to speak to their parents about their marriage, because if their parents' marriage isn't great, our kids are too practical in this day and age. By the time they go to college, they'll go with the thinking that, Christianity doesn't work, or it's not worth working at, because they didn't see it making a real difference at home. So I want to challenge the parents there. Again, it's really about getting and making it right for the kids. And the family devotion stuff, well, that's about teaching truth to kids in ways where they'll actually listen. So yes, I'm helping parents, and I really want to help them, but it really comes down to that love, that concern for the next generation. So there's the common denominator.
I love that. This is one of the things that I teach you, that we have a core issue that we're passionate about, that Christ has created us to be passionate about. And there's ancillary all over the place, topics and subjects and ways to help that we can reach out and branch out. But we know this is really about that thing there in the very center of the ring. And for you, it's the youth.
Yeah.
The youth, the boys specifically now. It used to be. Is it girls too now?
Well, it's all, but I think the tougher challenge is boys. My wife and I raised 3 sons, so I've got a special heart for them, obviously. And I had I still have 2 younger brothers. And, but there was a lot of years between us. My younger brothers, one was 9 years younger, one was 12 years younger. And I tell you what, that was so much fun. I just had a riot with them, and we got in lots of trouble. And so, so there's this heart for them, and they are, probably one of the more neglected groups. Is, if you would say that they're kind of the outcasts of the publishing industry, and at least in the Christian realm. So yeah, girls love what I write, but you write a certain way. There's probably a good 10 things or so different that I'll do writing for boys. Girls would never notice, they'll love it. But if you do it right, you'll get them both. Here's what I always say, Patricia, is that if somebody says they're writing for kids, I know they're writing for girls. That's who they're going to get. If they're writing for boys and they're doing it right, they'll probably get them both. But if you try to lump them together, you're going to violate some things, and you're going to have problems.
That's a very interesting insight. How did you discover that?
I think
natural to you because of your history.
Well, yeah, and I think at one point for the conference I'll be speaking at in another week or so, Marlene, I think, wanted me to teach one about, I think it was reaching boys with fiction, and I really had to determine, well, what was I doing different? And then I started making this list and thought, oh my goodness, there are definitely things I'm doing different. And another thing is, I think definitely my philosophy when you're writing for middle grade, young adult, high school, junior high, younger. So if you were to say, Patricia, or if somebody said, I write for kids, I would say, you're going to have a problem. Because here's what happens. If you think of yourself writing for kids, I can almost guarantee you that your writing will take on a parental tone. You won't notice it. The kids may not notice it, but something about it won't resonate. If you talk about writing for kids, you'll probably repeat yourself in your writing. You'll dumb it down. You'll think that they won't get it. And sometimes there's plausibility issues. They're thinking, oh, this is just for kids, or quality issues. So to me, when I'm writing for kids, I think of them as being just as smart as me. They're smarter in technology. They're smarter in math. I've been too long removed from some of that stuff. But I've got experience. That translates into wisdom. That they don't have. So they're smart, but they lack wisdom. Now that's the basis when I'm writing to them. I write to an audience that's smart, so I don't dumb it down. I write to the very best ability that I can because I'm writing for very smart people, but they lack experience. So I want to make everything believable if it's fiction. I want to make it, very real. But it tends not to sound parental that way, and that's just one of the reasons I think that they really like it.
I'm hearing you describe a level of finesse that's required to effectively reach this age group that may not be necessary in other age groups.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, for example, if I were teaching with kids, I would, there's a number of things Jesus did when he taught. We don't always think of them, but there were things he did. I've kind of laid out 8 things that he did when he taught. Now, if I'm speaking to high school kids, I want to get 6 or 7 out of those 8 going, if I can. And if I know the kids really well, I can hit all 8. I'm firing on all 8, basically. And, we can get away with a lot with speaking to adults. At least some people think they can. But adults are just really good at checking out.
Yes.
And so to me, the very same things I found to be effective with kids work really good talking to men. And
that was surprising to me.
Sorry. But they also work great. I was speaking at a women's conference a couple of years ago, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to be me. I'm going to speak. I'm going to have some object lessons. I'm going to get some volunteers up. I'm going to do that. It was extremely effective. And everybody learns better with a little more visual presentation.
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily mean PowerPoint. I mean visual as in...
Well, behind you. We can see what you mean. A full body skeleton behind you.
I've got a closet of stuff. I won't take you in there. I'll tell you what, there are some strange things in that closet. So.
Oh boy. Okay. So one of the things that we were talking earlier before we got on live, that both of us are passionate about as teachers, and that is that just delivering the message is not enough. We are trained and taught that it is, not formally, but informally, just by osmosis, as the many years that we were in school. Delivering the information was, the teacher closes the book and they walk out of the classroom and they're done. But when we're teaching real life, we've got to have, not that they aren't, I don't mean to be disrespectful to them, but they weren't taught that results mean somebody's life has changed. They're not just dispensing information wasn't the end point.
Right.
Practical application, which you're so very strong at. And why, I know why I'm passionate about that, but why are you so passionate about that?
Well, generally we've got a message burning in our hearts, something that we're passionate about, or if we're preparing for a particular time of talking. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to know that the chances of that getting through and them really being reached by that is so minimal if we don't work harder at it. So to me, if I'm talking to, like, say, pastors at a pastors conference and we're talking about teaching methods, I say, okay, you've got your message, you put that together, and that's something that's burning on your heart, but you're only partially done. Now you have to find the right method to get it across so that they hear your message. And Jesus was the master at it.
And that brings it home and locks it in, doesn't it, in their memory?
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. You know what? It's interesting. So many different times, you'll read where Jesus went, from synagogue to synagogue, and he taught in the synagogue or whatever. Very rarely do you read what he talked about, although you might read, okay, he read from Isaiah here or whatever, but you don't get his sermons, really. It's these more visual, more open ones he did. Sermon on the Mount, obviously, but so many times when he was teaching nuggets of truth, whereas in Christendom, they're going through not nuggets, they're I don't want to say force feeding, but they're giving so much information. Whereas Jesus was giving little nuggets and he made sure that they got them. He tied it in with a story. He tied it in with a visual. He taught us all kinds of stuff visually. And we sort of discount them because often we think of them, oh, well, they were miracles. Yeah, he did. He did miraculous object lessons. They were still object lessons. Here's a guy who's blind and now he's seeing. Here's a guy who's lame and now he's not. And they were seeing the power of God, the love of God, so many different things. Yeah.
I could talk about this for a long, long time. So, let me check and see if we have any comments or questions.
Oh.
Not currently. We do not currently. We may. I'll check again in a little bit. So how did you start? Was it 10 years ago, 12 years ago? How did you get your start in this field? And you are so accomplished now, so established, such a broad reach of customers and topics and audience members. The Lord's given you lots and lots of great opportunities that are very widespread. How did this happen? How did it begin?
Well, it's obviously it's all Him, right? It's all, credited to Him. But where the earliest speaking thing started, I had several devotion books out, family devotion books, and my heart was for those dads that found it very hard to teach, and they thought kids wouldn't listen, they thought kids would be bored, and that type of thing. So I ended up having these books, and I was talking with my brother-in-law. Actually, one of my brother-in-law is a pastor, and we were visiting him out in Iowa, and we're looking out over these fields at night, and he says, well, how are those books doing? I said, well, not as good as I hoped. And what was I thinking? Men are going to resist it. They don't realize what's in the book and how it can help them. I said, if I could just get men in a room, I know I could get them over the hurdles that are holding them back. And, we're just sort of looking out over this night scene, and he says, why don't you come and do it at our church? And it was this, wait a minute, that was a figure of speech. I didn't really mean I want to get guys in the room. I'm just saying if I could, right? And, but, in my heart, I knew that's what I was supposed to do. And then I will tell you, after that first time of speaking like that, it was like you realized you were made for this and you didn't know it. And so that opened up more and more things as far as talking about. So that would be one thing I would say for sure. Out of the comfort zone? Oh, yeah. I mean, not even in the same state. And, but not saying no and giving it a try. And it opened up all kinds of things. That's how I started with writing. I never was writing before. And I mean, kids would say, you've got to write these stories down. My kids are saying that, nieces, nephews. I'm like, I don't want to write these down. I'm just telling stories. I'm not going to remember it. So but one time I tried and found out I loved it. So these are things that, the Lord brings along your way. And sometimes I think, we can't discount the stuff too quick and say, oh, no, I can't do that. Or I never do that. It's interesting when you read Romans 12:1 and 2, where it talks about, therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercies, that you present your bodies as living sacrifices. That part there, that's talk about surrendering to God, right? It talks about not being conformed to the world, but being transformed by the renewing of your mind. Okay, so we've got that. Live as a sacrifice, surrendered and different from the world. You're not going to go down that route of where so many are going, right? And then the next word is then. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And this is what I've found, is as we surrender to him, he brings things in front of us. Yeah. If I were to, I know a lot of people are planners. If I were to lay out a 5-year plan, oh my goodness, am I glad I didn't, because his plans have been things I wouldn't have imagined, but so much better. Yeah.
For you, a 5-year plan would have boxed you in, wouldn't it?
Probably, yeah. I think it would have been a lot smaller than what he would have done. Speaking at schools. Are you kidding me? Public schools? Junior high? Oh, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of speakers that would probably say, you know what, I'd rather walk to Canada Than speak in front of, do one assembly in front of junior high kids. But it's been fantastic. And that's just by being desperate, I guess, enough where you're saying, I want what God wants for me. And then saying, okay, I'll do it. And God help me. And you prepare and you find those methods to get your message across. Yeah.
One of the things that I love so much about teaching 17 and younger is that there is no facade.
Right.
If you aren't interested, they check out.
That's right.
They demand for you to be on point, applicable, practical, entertaining. I mean, they got a long list of things that are going to be required from a speaker or a writer before they're going to be loyal to that person.
Yeah. There's so many different things that are key. And with every minute that you're speaking, there's this, I don't know, you're gaining or losing respect.
That's right.
You lose much or it's over. But they're constantly deciding if I can trust this person, if they're worthy of listening to, that type of thing. And so that's one of the things that would be in those things that Jesus taught, or the way he taught. One of the things he did that we don't think about was he spoke truth.
Yes.
And we live in a world that people are not telling the truth. Certainly our kids are not being told the truth.
Yes.
In schools. And so if I'm telling them the truth and it resonates with them, they can say, that's one thing right there. Okay, they're interested. Other things, like that we don't necessarily think about. Somebody get up there and they've got this great message. You gotta really be careful. It's based in truth of the word, be truthful about our Christian experience. Another one, Patricia, that if I were to ask people to list the things that Jesus did when he taught, is love.
Yes.
He always spoke, he loved the people he was speaking with. There was love there, and that was a motivation. Now it's hard when you don't know an audience, but I picture people that I want to talk to, and I see different people. Maybe it's the writer in me. I see people ahead of time, and sometimes your heart hurts for them. Just by the way that, and now you're speaking with love. You remember the verse that? Well, here I'm going to read your verse, okay, and see if you can get it here, okay. And I will show you the most excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, and not have love, I'm going to resound wrong with the tough to get the message, right?
Yes.
And so it says, that's why it says, and now I will show you the most excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Believe me, that's the way it is when you're talking with kids. You know what? If you don't have love for them, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Torture for them and for you.
There is such a lack of truth and sincere caring for the people that we are serving that, excuse me, as you said, it's a rare quality and it's very noticeable. And I know that you've seen this yourself more often than I have, that people know, even if they can't articulate what it is different between that writer or speaker and that one, there's one that they will key in on, and it's the Holy Spirit drawing them into the truth that writer or speaker is delivering, even if it's couched in a story or an object lesson.
Yeah,
people respond to the truth.
I believe that's true. Yeah, there's
God's truth. Yes.
Yeah. Now some would want to run from it, some want to hide from it, but deep down, they want to be told the truth. They want to know the truth, and there's those who are hungry for it. And for those, nothing else will work. And
that's no matter what the age is it, or the gender?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, now let's talk about, speaking of writing, excuse me, you're going to be delivering 4 different, well, they're not even 4 presentations at the Call It Greater Philadelphia Christian Writers Conference that is next weekend, starting July the 26th. We've got a keynote. Most everybody knows what a keynote is, and a workshop. We're familiar with that. But there are 2 phrases that give me some elaboration on, please. One is teens write, and one is continuing session. Describe those to me, how they work. If I was attending that, what would I learn?
Okay, well, they've got a special track just for teens who are writing. And so it's really good because they get some extra individual attention. So they'll have a number of speakers come in and talk about different topics just for them. So I'll be talking to them about show, don't tell, and about point of view and going deeper with that point of view. So it's great. They get to, and of course they'll be asking questions related to what they're working on, but generally you get a nice group of teen writers in there, and it's good because they can connect together and talk and relate, and it's not nearly as intimidating for them as it might be if they were in a room full of what they might perceive to be seasoned writers or something. But so yeah, there'll be a whole track for them where different speakers will come in like all day and speak to them about stuff. So that's one of the things. And then you mentioned continuing sessions. So throughout that weekend, there'll be a number of times that I'll meet with the same group, and it's just that it's a bigger topic, and I'll have longer to talk about it, which is really great. When you have a normal workshop, it's wonderful. You have to prepare what you're sharing to fit in that time slot.
Right.
But when we have this one here, I'm going to have like a 3.5 hour time slot broken over a period of, whatever it would be, probably 3 different times we meet. I can't remember if it's 3 or 4, but now you can get deeper. And sometimes that's the best way to get a connection. If I can take you from this point and bring you all the way through, and we kind of package it all together, and you see these different elements. So we're, going to talk to them about taking your fiction to the next level. A lot of times you'll talk with somebody and they're writing to the best of their ability, and they've got the story and they're really excited about it. And now they don't know what to do. Am I ready? What does it need now? And so we'll give them some things to look at, places to look in their manuscript, and show them how to take it up to the next level, which is going to be, I think, a lot of fun.
Sounds really rewarding for you as the teacher, is it?
Oh my goodness. Patricia, I love it. I love it. And you know how it is when you're speaking with people, there'll be, as you're kind of sweeping the room, and just when you look at it and you see it on their faces, and you know that you're getting through, and they're excited about something now that they can apply to their story. It's got to be practical. This is about equipping. It's not about wowing anybody. So I think we've all heard speakers where, they're just out there talking about themselves and their accomplishments and all this kind of stuff. And after a while, you're like, oh man, it's discouraging. So one of the things that, we'll be doing, obviously, is it's all about teaching and equipping, helping them get it so that these become tools that they can use to make their writing stronger.
That light bulb moment, you can see it happen, and it just makes you go, your light bulb comes on as a teacher, isn't it? Doesn't it?
Goodness, yes, right. And when you know it went on for them, or they talk with you afterwards, you're just as excited as they are. So, yeah.
Yes. So now, do you do writers and speakers conferences all across the country all year long? Most of them are cyclical, a lot in the spring and a lot in the fall, and not quite as many in the summer and the winter. But or do you just keep your activities outside the home to a minimum? Are you wide open? How does that work for you? Just as an established writer who's very busy, how do you get it all done?
Well, you don't get it all done. So there's the truth. So, but you never skimp on preparing for speaking. That's one thing that, I will, if something's going to give, it'll be a personal goal, not something where I'm going to be presenting for somebody else. You don't want to skimp family. You don't want to skimp others that are coming to hear you. but you may not get everything done on your to-do list that you wanted to otherwise. But, it's funny. I'm trying to think. This year is probably maybe between 6 and 8 conferences I did. That's a lot for writing conferences. And yeah, I think they started in February and we went through spring, and I think there'll be 3 this summer. And fall's pretty quiet, not anything I could think of right off the top of my head there. But it's good, because then in between you've got time to work on other things and such. And then there's, assemblies and different things like that. And so you're always praying, God, bring in the speaking, because that augments the writing so much. You need that speaking, and he always seems to deliver. Even though you look at the head of the calendar and say, "Boy, it's looking a little sparse that next quarter there," So he works it out. So it does kind of run in different phases. Sometimes, like this weekend, I'll be at a homeschool convention. I'll be teaching there, and that'll be a lot of fun. We're going to teach parents how to teach their kids about God in ways where they'll listen. And you'd think, why would they need it? Oh my goodness, they're hungry for it in ways that they can effectively get through. And I'll teach a little writing technique too. So those are different workshops there. So yeah.
So all sounds good to me. All the topics that you talk about, I'm interested in. I know that one of the things that the enemy does when we're just getting into the field, or we haven't yet become as established as we hope to be, is he gives us these lies that are right from the pit. Everybody's doing everything. Everything must be done on a timely manner. Everything has to be on someone else's time frame. It has to be perfect. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But I'm hearing you say that as we follow Christ, he gives us a rhythm to our schedule, doesn't he? Each individual writer or speaker develops that rhythm with his help.
Yeah, right. And that rhythm sometimes gets dictated by him, because all of a sudden this opportunity comes along, or this project comes along. And last fall, I was working on a new Bible that was going to be for, I would say it's probably geared at that middle grade, perhaps YA. And so there were all these pieces that need to be written for it. Mm-hmm. And so it was so much fun. I think I agreed to do 10 pieces to begin with. And it turned into over 80 pieces in the end, because would you do a little more? Can you do a little more of that? And you know what? God had that work out where that gave a very different routine to those couple of months. There was tight deadlines. But you know what? You mentioned a really good thing, Patricia, when you talked about the enemy's lies. There's so many of them. In the keynote I'll give at that Greater Philadelphia Christian Writers Conference, the theme, or the title is Undaunted. And we're going to look at some things from the book of Nehemiah, from his life. And oh my goodness, what a parallel to us as writers, because so many of the tactics used on Nehemiah to keep that wall from being built are the same things that the enemy does. Discouragement's a big one. Discouragement, distractions, threats. Wow, we know all about that as writers. So I think there'll be some really good encouragement there.
There always is. I've never been in one of your presentations that there wasn't great encouragement. A great mix of the truth, balancing the truth with the encouragement. So sort of break us down in a pleasant way, if that's possible, and without leaving us. Because Christ, even when he disciplines us and he takes us to the desert, he doesn't leave us there.
Yeah.
The enemy leaves us there and tells us there's no hope of us ever getting back. But Christ stays with us. Even when he's silent, he's still with us. And then he's encouraging back. So there's that correction, the discipline, the correction, and then the building back up. And I think that those are one of the three elements that make your presentation so valuable. I'm not getting paid anything to say this. I'm just a big fan of Tim Shoemaker.
Wow, that's great.
I always have been. The first Christian Writers Conference that I went to was the Marlene's Colorado Christian Writers Conference, and you were there teaching Show Don't Tell, totally new topic to me. I was just, my jaw was dropping all the time. I was just fascinated because I do like results-oriented teaching, practical helps and tips and all kinds of things like that versus theory. Theory's got its place, but it doesn't really help me change my life that day, and your teaching does. So so I have a little flag that I wave. I didn't show it on camera. It's Tim Shoemaker, Tim Shoemaker.
Nice. I love it.
It's so wonderful to talk to you today. So wonderful.
Patricia, definitely.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And all of you who are viewing, thank you so much. I'm glad that you tuned in. And I hope to see you at a conference somewhere.
Yes, yes. And you have links on your Facebook and social media and your website. I'm going to include all of those resources, viewers, above the video, that you'll be able to find that. You'll be able to find Tim anywhere online where he is. And next weekend, he's going to be in Philadelphia at the Greater Philadelphia Christian Writers Conference, directed by Marlene Bagnull. You must move on this. You cannot continue to delay this. If you're hesitant, if you have questions, contact Marlene and or her team. Ask the questions that you need. Let them answer those. Let them get rid of some of those barriers that the enemy is trying to put in your way. Don't be brave. Do be brave. Step out, follow Christ. You will not regret it. This has been episode of Marketers on a Mission, episode number 87, my interview with best-selling author Tim Shoemaker. There are many effective writers who don't have traditional credentials, causing them to feel that they can't be published. They're not worthy. This is a lie straight from the pit. In tomorrow's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to connect the dots that proves you are qualified to deliver that message that Christ has put on your heart, giving you confidence to step out and then approach a publisher and offer your message. That's all happening tomorrow right here at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Until then, I'm Patricia Durkin, the Christian Message Coach, and I pray that more people hear the good news online because of your message. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow.